Well, welcome back. Last week, Christian had that amazing experience at the cross, and the rucksack that had been weighing him down the whole time, it was gone now, and he'd been given this new mark on his head to show that he belonged to the King. He'd been given this scroll to seal him, to help him, to guide him on his way, and he'd been given these fresh new clothes, and he was so happy. All that burden, all that weight he'd been carrying, everything that made him cry was gone. He was like a new man. And he was like jumping and walking and singing all down the path. The path was right by a cliff, and there was a wall on one side. And as he was walking along, down, winding down along this cliff, suddenly he tripped, fell over. And he realised he tripped over someone's leg sticking out on the path. And as he looked across, he saw 3 guys, all chained up around their ankles, sitting by this rock. They're all asleep. They were so close to the path, the narrow path, but they weren't quite on it. And Christian shouted over to them, "Why are you sleeping? Why are you sleeping here? Can't you see? You're right on the edge of a cliff. Right on the edge of a cliff, and down there is this huge abyss, huge bottomless pit underneath that water. If you fall in there, there's no way out." But it was like they could hardly hear him. One of them, "Oh, it's sort of yawned." And Christian said, "Oh, wake up. Wake up, you can't go on sleeping. And why are you all tied up? Why are your feet in chains? You're in danger. The devil prowls around like a roaring lion, and if he comes along, sat here sleeping with chains on your feet, you'll never be able to run away. You'll never be able to win. He'll just munch on you with his massive teeth and claw you. You'll be easy prey for him. Come on, I'll help you get those chains off your feet. I know where to go so you can be set free. Wake up, wake up." Well, they slowly woke up. You can see their names are Simple, Sloth, and Presumption. And they all started to answer Christian. Simple, once he'd finally woken up, looked, well, very simple, and he just said, "I don't see any danger. I can't see anything you've warned us about. I can't see anything that's dangerous at all. Nothing here to worry about. No, I can't see anything that you're talking about. No lion, no cliff. It's not very dangerous. I might be tied up, but that's no problem. I don't see any danger." And then he sat down again and fell back asleep. Sloth, "I just couldn't stop yawning. Oh, don't wake me up. I just need a little bit more sleep. Just sort of tuck me back into bed. Let me be comfortable. I can't. Oh, it sounds like too much hard work to get rid of these chains. Sounds like too much hard work. I'd rather just sleep here. Don't bother me. There's no problem. Everything's fine. It's all peaceful at the moment. Oh, just leave me alone." He fell back to sleep. And then last was Presumption. And he stood up and he brushed himself off. And he said some clever words to Christian. Every tub, every vase has to stand on its own base. It's all right. Don't worry. Everything's fine. I can live however I like, really, and it'll all be fine. The King will just let it go. No problem at all. Don't worry. I don't see what you're worrying about. Doesn't really matter if we're chained or if we're easy prey. Doesn't matter how we live. It's all going to be okay, isn't it? So, anyway, and he fell back off to sleep. There was nothing that Christian could do to wake them up. It really worried Christian, really disturbed him. He was like so close to the cross that there was 3 guys who were so close who could be set free. And they just couldn't see it, couldn't be bothered, or just assumed everything would be okay. It really bothered Christian. He was all excited. He was like, yes, I'm following the king. Look at everything he's done for me. Why can't these 3 see it? He carried on his way, talking to himself, all frustrated. And if that wasn't bad enough, then he got caught by surprise. 2 guys just came jumping over the wall and landed right in front of him. They just sort of fell over the wall, picked themselves up, dusted themselves off, and they were laughing to each other. Oh, what an amazing shortcut. Yeah, no one will ever find out. That was easy. You just get in this way. Their names were Hypocrisy and Formal or Formality. Christian said to them, hey, you can't just climb over there and come in that way. Why didn't you go through the gate back on the path a little way back? That's the way, the only way to come in, to be saved, to be safe. You can't just climb in wherever you like. And Formal and Hypocrisy just said to Christian, don't worry. People have been doing this for thousands of years, taking this shortcut over the wall. There's no problem. Any judge in the end will say it's legal because people have been getting away with it forever. There's absolutely no problem at all. They just climb in this way, which sounds like way too much hard work to walk all the way back to the gate and come all the way to the cross. This way's much closer to where we live. We live in vainglory, and we're heading to Mount Zion for praise. So leave us alone, get off our back. Stop complaining, would you? Aren't you glad we're at least on the narrow path? Christian, it bothered him so much. He said, oh, that's not what my book says. Bible says, my book says, anyone who climbs in through any other way apart from the gate are thieves and robbers. You're already counted thieves by the king. That's how he already sees you. How is that going to change when you get to the celestial city? Why is that going to change? If he sees you as thieves and robbers now, what about then? You have to go back and enter at the gate onto this narrow path. This book says so. But all they could just say to Christian was, well, all the people we know, our friends and family, we've lived close to this wall for thousands of years. We just climb over it. Loads of people have gone ahead of us. It's our tradition. And Christian said, exactly. You're not living by the rules of the king, but by your own rules. You're doing it your own way. It won't work. But they wouldn't listen. And then they noticed his strange clothes, and that's all they could do. They carried on along the path with Christian, but they were just picking on his clothes. Look at that stupid cloak. Look at those shining clothes. Look at him, so weird. You look so different. Why can't you dress normally? And they just picked on everything he was wearing and everything he was doing, as if he was some sort of crazy person. But Christian took it as a compliment. He said, these clothes were given to me by the king to cover my shame, to cover up all the embarrassing things I'd done. I take it as a good thing. And anyway, that's how the king is going to recognize me when I get to Celestial City, that I'm wearing the clothes that he gave me to wear. Not any old clothes, not my own good things, but his clothes. And you haven't noticed the mark on my forehead that he gave me, or this seal to show that I belong to him. I take it as a great thing. I'm going to be recognized that I belong to the king when I get there. Well, they carried along the path. Christian didn't really have much more to say apart from to himself. Formality and Hypocrisy followed behind, just sniggering at him. He's stupid. What a stupid man. Well, they arrived at this place called the Hill of Difficulty. And Christian is going to climb that next week. We're going to look at that. Christian saw where the narrow path was going. It was going straight up the hill. And he'd learnt his lessons. He knew no matter what was on that path, that was the path to follow. So he started the great climb up these steep steps up this mountain and disappeared. But formal and hypocrisy just looked at him saying, "Ah, what a stupid man. Look, he just follows blindly. Like he takes the most difficult way up all those steps. We're not going up that way. Look at these two other ways. I bet they just meet that same path and they're a lot easier to walk. Look, you don't have to climb up any hills or anything." The problem was, one of the ways was called danger and one of the ways was called destruction, but it's like they missed the signposts on their way round. One of them said, "I'm going to take the way of danger," and the other one said, "I'm going to take the way of destruction." Lot easier. Well, hypocrisy took the way called danger, which led him into this massive forest. There was thick trees and bushes and plants, and it took all his energy to try and keep going the best he could, but the trees got closer together and the branches stretched out and it blocked all the light out. He couldn't tell where he was. He couldn't tell if he'd been there before. He ended up just going round and round and round in circles, draining all his energy. And it was only at the last moment that he got frightened. He didn't have a clue where he was. And that forest swallowed him up forever. And he was never seen again by anybody. Formal walked the path to destruction. And it led him into this valley full of spiky mountains. And as he was wandering there, he tripped on this rock and he fell and hit the ground so hard that he never got up again, and he was never seen by anyone again. Christian carried on his climb up the hill of difficulty. And if you want to find out what happens next in the story, you have to tune in next week. Well, we're going to go back over today's story to see what Jesus wants us to learn, and there's some really important lessons. I wonder if you can think back, if you know Jesus, to when you first trusted in him, and that relief you felt when Jesus forgave you for all your sins. It was an amazing day, and that's how Christian felt. He was walking and singing and jumping because it was like he knew that someone loved him properly for the first time. The Bible calls it your first love when you believe in Jesus. It's amazing, and people have written songs about the grass being greener and the sky bluer. It's like everything comes alive when you know Jesus, and you know your purpose. Your life has a meaning. You're made for Jesus. You're made by Jesus, and you love him, and you walk on that way. That's how Christian was. But there's also dangers still. So these three guys who were all sleepy that Christian met are like warnings to us of how not to fall into their trap. And it's so frustrating for Christian because they're so close to the narrow path, but they're not on it. And he wants to help them. He realizes they're in danger. Jesus has opened his eyes to see clearly, just like he's opened our eyes to see clearly when we trust in him. And we can then see other people's danger. We can see that they're still trapped in sin and the devil's after them and they're in danger of hell, basically. That's the abyss, the cliff that's right by them. So Christian tries to wake them up. And I wonder if you are a Christian and you've ever tried to speak to people who are not Christians then, you got like this new enthusiasm and fire as a Christian, like, do you know about Jesus? And you start talking and they just don't seem to care. It can be frustrating. So only Jesus can wake people up like Christian had. It was reading the Bible. It was, through these experiences of hearing evangelists preaching, that he was woken up by Jesus. So we need to pray that Jesus would wake others up so they can see their danger. And if you haven't realized your danger, you need to wake up and trust in Jesus. But these three are like warnings: simple, sloth, and presumption. Being simple is not really about how clever you are, how academic you are, or how slow you are. It's got nothing to do with that. It's about how you look at the world. And someone who's simple just looks through their own eyes, and they're just like, well, I don't see Jesus, I don't see God, I don't see any danger, I don't really believe the devil exists, no one's really that bad at sin, people are good at heart, aren't they, really? I don't know, there's nothing really to worry about. But Jesus says, he's constantly saying in the Bible, come in here if you're simple and I'll make you wise. I'll open your eyes to see, actually, you have sinned. You are in danger. And at the moment, God's anger is being shown in your life and you need to be saved. So it's dangerous. We can fall into like this simple way of looking at life like, oh, it's just what it is and there's no real end. There's no real consequences. But Jesus says it's life forever or experiencing death forever, and we need to wake up and have his help, and he can make us wise. He can change us from being simple into wise. How amazing. Well, sloth is just someone who's lazy, and we all can fall into that temptation. Someone who's lazy in the Bible is called a sluggard or a slug, all slimy and just not really going anywhere fast, or just like all tired and sleepy. But the problem is, then the Bible says just a little more sleep, just a little more rest, and poverty comes on you like a bandit. In other words, if you're like that, your life can be just stolen away. Imagine waking up in your bedroom and someone's taken all your stuff. Like, what's happened? Well, imagine waking up and you realise someone's stolen your life. How sad that would be. And it's all because you've just been lazy. Time has gone. You had so many chances and you missed them all. But Jesus says, wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and I will shine on you. Jesus can give you power and help. We're full of laziness sometimes. Well, I can't be bothered to go to church. I can't be bothered to read my Bible. I can't be bothered to come and pray. I'm so tired. I've been working hard. But Jesus says, wake up and I will shine my face on you. And that's where you need to be. And presumption is someone who just assumes they can live however they like, really, which is a very dangerous place, isn't it? They say God is so kind, he just forgives everybody. But the problem is, it's like treating Jesus' death on the cross, treating Jesus like he did nothing. It's like saying, oh, it didn't really cost him anything, did it? It's no big deal for him to forgive me. Well, that's not how Jesus feels. Jesus went through agony and pain and darkness and death. He gave everything. He paid with the highest price so that we could have life and be changed, not so we'd carry on living the way we were. So don't fall into that trap if you've heard other people say it. Oh, each person's got to find their own way. Not at all. Not at all. Jesus has died, paid a huge price so we can be forgiven. And we can't just carry on sinning however we want. The Bible says we should count ourselves dead to sin, be changed into new people by Jesus' power. Then hypocrisy and formality. So these are other two dangers we can fall into. Hypocrisy is like Jesus constantly says to the Pharisees, you hypocrites. He calls them hypocrites. In other words, they say one thing, but they don't live it. They just say lots of words and they say, this is the way we should be living. We understand the Bible. That's how we should be living. We understand what God says. This is the way we should live. But Jesus says, so listen to their teaching, but don't do what they do, because they don't live the lives that they teach. They don't do what they say. And sadly, sometimes our lives can be full of talk. We know what to do. We know what to say, but we don't do it and we don't say it. And it's just as bad as not being a Christian. This shortcut, Jesus warns us that the only way to really know him is to believe and trust in him and receive him, not just by knowing what we should do, but we actually have to live lives that back it up. And to come in another way, we don't get given Jesus' righteousness, his clothes. We're not sealed by the Spirit. We're just doing our own thing, and that's what Christian challenged them with, to actually become Christians. And then this formal, it's like this dead way. It's like people go to church, they read the Bible, they pray, but it's all in a wooden way, all in a dead way. They don't actually have a new heart. They don't live with the power. And Jesus says it's like they have this form of godliness. It's like they look like Christians, but there's no real life or power in their hearts. Their hearts are still like stones. And it's such a sad ending. I mean, Christian warns them, and there's loads of warnings in the Bible that we need to listen to so we don't become hypocrites, so we don't just say one thing but don't live lives that back it up, and so we don't just go through the motions and actually there's no real love and life to Jesus in what we do. But they don't listen, and we're warned here, hypocrisy and formality, they just lead to danger and destruction. What a sad end for these two men. Hypocrisy just gets tied up by his own words, like these vines wrap around him and he's lost in the forest forever. Don't be like that, Jesus says. Don't be lost in your own hypocrisy, but become genuine, become actually what Jesus wants you to be. Let your life be lived out in truth and light, and avoid that danger. And formality, well, if you're dead in your heart, stone cold dead, you just live out that life in the end. You don't ever know the life of Jesus in your heart. What a sad place to be, isn't it? It's like you look like a Christian, but you need to actually have that new heart. And Jesus says, I can take away your heart of stone and give you a living heart, a heart of flesh that loves me. He can take away all the formality, all the stuff we just do in our routine for the sake of it, and make it real. Well, here's some things that you can do. Have a read of these verses and Proverbs, and have a look at why it's so dangerous to be simple, to stay simple in the way that we heard in the story, and what we need to do. Then, again, question 3, have a look at Proverbs and Ephesians. Why is being lazy so dangerous, and how can we change? Then Romans 6, why is assuming God's grace and help, why is carrying on living a sinful life so dangerous, and what do we need to do? And then Luke and Timothy and Ezekiel, how can we sometimes fall into that danger of being formal and dry and dead, and what's the answer? And then Matthew is one of the bits where Jesus talks to the Pharisees. How can we sometimes be hypocrites? Really have a think carefully about that and see what Jesus says the answer is. And then you can add simple sloth and presumption to your map on the edge of a cliff and chained up with the sea underneath. And then formal and hypocrisy, you can do them sort of falling over the wall, taking their dangerous shortcut. And then have a think, what different people in the Bible do these characters represent? Who else was simple in the Bible? Who was lazy? Who presumed too much? Who was formal and dead? And who would just said things but didn't do them? Did they change? There's loads of examples where they did change. See if you can find them and ask Jesus to help you to avoid all these dangers. See you next time.